Hey there, and welcome to this second episode in this series on Koala Sampler. And today what we're going to do in this brief video is just look at like gadgets, speakers, headphones and cables and bits and bobs, just things that you might need to sort of get set up. Now, in the first episode, I talked a lot about doing things on a very tight budget, and I think that should always be the sort of starting point because, as I said, not all of us have the luxury of having fancy iPads and different things. But yeah, normally, as I said, I've got an iPhone. I'm currently using that above me to record things, so I can't show you that. But that would be my absolute bare minimum starting point, would be my iPhone, the app itself, which, as I said, I think for probably under £10, you can have the full app with all the add-ons. And surprisingly, actually what I would use would be some of these little gizmos here, which are just the bog standard wired Apple AirPods. Now, these are the ones with a 3.5mm connection on. I've got the ones with the lightning connector for my iPhone 11. But when I want to plug these in for the iPad, I've got a little adapter that works for that. And the reason I say use these is because, strangely enough, there's a lot of producers who swear by these for checking mixes. Usually if you can get something to sound half decent on these things, like if you can hear your drums and your bass and all the other elements in your mix on these in some relatively clear fashion, then your mix is probably pretty good. It's not going to get you anything like using big studio monitors, but again, we're talking about if you've only got like a really small budget, you want to make some music, you want to get it out to the world and just get started, you can absolutely use these, and I guarantee you can make a mix and do something perfectly well on these that would be, well received online, put it on your YouTube or your Spotify or whatever. So that would be the first thing. That's the absolute bare minimum, would be, even if it's an Android phone, again, I can't speak for Android, but whatever the equivalent, like earbud things are, I'm sure there's a half decent set you can get for Android that would do the job. Someone somewhere will have, recommended some. Next, you could step up to something like this. Just for like if you want to, even if you're still on the phone or you're using an iPad, whatever you're stepping up to, you want something to be able to listen without using headphones. I use this little mini speaker all the time. Again, it's the idea that if you can make something sound good on this, chances are it'll sound good elsewhere. This one has a 3.5mm auxiliary port. I don't know if it'll show up on here. It's quite dark in the studio today. Can we see it there somewhere? Anyway, doesn't really matter. But that one allows you to plug cable directly in. It's also Bluetooth. Now, that's one thing to talk about. I'll probably cover it more in settings. You can, of course, Bluetooth from the iPad to the speakers, your iPhone to the speaker, but you will get some lag in that. So when you're hitting your pads, it's going to lag the speaker. There's going to be a lag time between the noise that when you press the pad and when it arrives at the speaker. So when you're like live finger drumming, that becomes like a bit of a problem if it's too much of a like too much latency, I suppose is the word I'm looking for. So bear that in mind. If you've got it wired in, it's not a problem, and that's what I do. I usually wire it in through this port. This one is a little Anchor Soundcore Mini. It's got great reviews on Amazon. Again, I'm not affiliated with them or saying anything. It's just the one that I personally use. It's the older one. And to be honest, 20 quid on Amazon. And I think I probably picked this one up for £5 from Facebook Marketplace. So again, you can do things like on the super cheap. But yeah, that's good if you want to start moving up away from like headphones. In terms of how I've got my current setup, this little dongle at the back here, which I think I can bring into view without disturbing everything, is this little Kingston Nucleum hub, and essentially it does that. It's got a couple of USB ports, an SD card, a couple of USB-C ports, which for this particular iPad is important, and I've also got this cable connector here, and that's going off to just like a little audio interface that's going into the iMac, so I can record this for you guys with the audio from the iPad when we get to that point. That's just so that you know what sort of setup I'm working with. The reason I like the hub, aside from it being a good way to get the audio out, is that I can plug the charger in at the same time so that I don't lose like charge, obviously. And it also has a little micro SD card, and I happen to have a micro SD card with like 60 gig on it or something. So when we get into the part of loading in samples and stuff, that's actually where I'm loading a lot of my samples from. So if you've got sample packs, if you've got like WAV files and you want to have them that way, having a little dongle thing plugged in, you could you can do that, and then you can just access your samples like really quickly and easily. Now this Kingston Nucleum I bought because it's got a really good rep for reliability and it working and doing all the things it should. Amazon definitely sell cheaper ones of those, and you know, chances are they're probably perfectly reliable as well. I just happened to have the money at the time. I think that one was like £40. It's quite expensive for a little dongle, but that's what I've got set up there. Now this cable coming out, aside from going into the iMac, also goes to my main studio monitors when I'm set up at the desk here. So when I'm working, I can listen to like my proper studio monitors and get like a better sound coming out of the iPad and all that kind of thing. But again, I just want to keep stressing, you don't need all the fancy stuff. You don't need the dongle. You don't need any of those things to get started. You could just get started with your phone and the application itself. So yeah, I think other than that, that's pretty much going to cover us for like cables. In the next episode, I'm going to jump into the user interface and we're going to start digging into actually the app itself and going through all the buttons and tabs and things, and we'll get you set up there. So hopefully you've enjoyed this episode. Take care. I'll see you in the next one.